Hey everyone. Today I want to talk about a very old meme in FFBE, and that is the meme of global is different game than JP. Like beforehand, like a year ago or 2 years ago, people would joke about this like global and JP are essentially the same game. And yeah, I would agree. But these days, especially for the last 4 months, I feel like Global really transitioned from a meme status of totally the same game, but nobody really wants to admit it in the dev team, to actually feeling very different to the JP server. Like, I do play JP very, very rudimentally, but whenever I do, it really feels like a different game. Banners are structured so differently. Units are, for the most part, super bad. And yeah, when I then get back to global, see new and exciting things, and especially units such as Mave, for example, it does feel different. But let's all agree, and for the first time ever, I do a script for today. Yay me! I actually managed to do a script. So I do have 4 talking points that are rather big, and I want to talk about this why I do believe that Global really feels like a different game now compared to JP. But let's all agree on one thing. The baseline of the game, units, mechanics, etc., they are all the same. But when you put them side by side, from the plain looks of it, yeah, same game, obviously. But the deeper you dive, the more differences appear, and those differences make up for very different experience while playing the game. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. The first big feature that we have that JP doesn't have is obviously Clash of Wills. Now, the global devs promised us harder content so long ago, and I'd like to really know how long it took for them to actually design this whole Clash of Wills feature or event, because it does have a lot of very unique features, right? It has the morale gauge, which is actually, once you have the units to move and shake the morale gauge, it's actually fun. Like Kresnik, if once you have him, you start to actually like Clash of Wills. I know it happened for me. The moment I got Kresnik, the whole Clash of Wills got a lot more enjoyable. And the bosses themselves, they are super hard. Like Morgana wasn't hard, to be honest. Oster, that was the second one. That one was already challenging for some people. Kairos, that was, from my point of view, and I know I said something entirely else back at the time, but looking back at it, I feel like Kairos was peak boss design. It was super hard. It wanted you to really, really think about your tank being actually a tank. So Behemoth, a unit that I trashed on for the correct reasons at the time, became relevant because he had all the necessary things that the boss wanted you to have. And all of a sudden, a unit, Behemoth in that case, that was considered and factually was the worst tank in the game, suddenly became the best tank because he countered the specifics of a boss fight. I feel like Gumi did an outstanding job on Kairos, looking back at it. And what came after, the first boss of season 2, I already forgot its name. I haven't even don't know what it was, but I hated it so much I didn't even bother doing it. And now we have Threshen. Threshen, as you can see, I actually bothered clearing this. And you probably saw my video yesterday. It's also a decent boss. The only thing I really, really dislike here is the RNG factor to morale. But overall, it's another hard boss. It is another tank fight where you really need to protect your tank. There are ways to do this and ways to circumvent having the tank take too much damage. And I like the mechanics and the things the devs want you to do. So things such as a zombie, for example, on the last boss, or the last 2 bosses, one should say. These are old mechanics. The devs, Alam especially, introduced way, way, way back then. And Gumi, you have to give it to Gumi that they actually took a step back, looked at what mechanics could we implement to annoy players, obviously, but also challenge their strategic minds. And you've seen this from Sinsar, Alan Wanderer. These two guys, they are our pinnacle of strategy. I mean, I am known for brute force strats. I'm not the best one when it comes to strategies and tactics in this game, truth be told, I'll be honest. But when it comes to brute forcing, such as Osta or Kairos, I like this. You could also brute force Hydra, for example. I liked my brute forcing approach that I have in mind, and that actually works. I just need to figure out how to get to 200% morale. But it is fun, and I totally understand why Wanderer and Sinsar have so much fun with these bosses, because they are challenging, revisiting old mechanics, making you really think, how can we build up as much morale as possible, like using Chaos Grenade from Riku's pouch on your own team and the boss, or World Destroyer, casting it on the boss and onto your own team just to increase morale. It's a clever idea, and truth be told, I would have not thought of this. Wanderer, I think, was the first one, or he was the first one I saw doing this World Destroy trick back in the day on Kairos, I believe. Amazing. So, and I feel like we have to give it to Gumi for creating these amazing bosses, and I'm actually curious to see what they are going to come up with next month, December. Another thing why Clash of Wills feels vastly different from Dark Visions, what we took over from the JP side of things, that rewards are actually worth it. You all know the drill. We're getting these Xenostone shards, the obnoxious drops, and what we gain from these, those are amazing rewards. I mean, we are getting pretty good units for free. Like White Dragon Ling, she's a unit that was released 4 months ago, and we are already getting her for free from the obnoxious shards. Granted, it's only max 2, I believe. It's still good. You're getting EX plus 1 Ling for free, basically. And Ling is an amazing unit. I rated her one of the best units in the game, or my personal top 5 units. And you should too. She has 4 killer types, does so much LB filling, etc., etc. She's such a versatile role compressing unit, and that's why people like Clash, and I'm starting to like Clash as well. So great feature, and one of the standout points that differentiates Global from JP. And the other thing is the obvious thing that sells Clash of Wills, and those are the units. Maeve is a very, very good example of this. I feel like, especially, let's not only talk about Maeve, but Maeve is a very, very good example of the global exclusive units that we've gotten ever since the introduction of Clash. Because these units, they actually kind of transform the playing experience. Maeve is a prime example here because she does 2 roles entirely differently, right? Base form, she's a physical tank. Brave Shift, she's a magical tank, and she works almost equally good in both forms. Like I mentioned in my Maeve review, she is currently the best physical tank in the game. Purely math speaking here, obviously. Real world tanking may differ. And the second best after Celeste, but Celeste is totally busted, but doesn't have the huge upsides of Maeve, so to speak. But yeah, she's a super, super strong magical tank, and she can freely switch between the 2 forms without any hiccups, no strings attached. It's super convenient. And she does what Alum failed with when they designed the first Neo Vision Aerith, for example, who was a supporter in base and a magic DPS in Brave Shift. She was a half decent supporter, but a bad magic DPS. The only reason people brought her because she was Neo Vision at that time, but she wasn't really dealing super much damage. Other super good example that enhanced the playing experience are White Wrangling. Bulwark and the Melodic Mascots is another great unit. Maeve, as we've just seen, and those are just a few examples of units that really transform the playing experience. And the whole morale gimmick, it's just fun that units such as Sky deal so much more damage the better you play, basically, in Clash of Worlds. And what I also very much like is that global units that were released prior to Clash of Worlds, Starlight Elena, Yoshikiri, Behimi, Noppy, Cacteria, etc. come to mind, that those are also getting upgrades. Now, most of them already have the upgrades. Yoshi, Starlight Elena, Behimi is getting his probably right after this particular Clash event ends, because they want to keep selling Maeve, obviously. But I mean, it's fine. Those units, they are either getting their deserved treatment to be meta again, like Yoshikiri. His upgrades are absolutely crazy, or they're actually somewhat useful for budget runs, like Starlight Lina. Starlight Lina, I wouldn't personally use in this particular clash, or maybe the next one. But if you don't have a better DPS, like Sky, for example, Starlight Lina is a decent budget version. For a unit that is over a year old, that's cool. And most units, they have very, very interesting kits compared to what the latest JP units offer, right? So Louise has an amazing kit, Ling has an amazing kit, Bulwark, Maeve, Sky, Kresnik, especially Kresnik has an amazing kit. And most of these units, especially Lara Croft, for example, they perform splendidly outside Clash of Worlds too. Like Louise, you've seen me use Louise and Ling so often outside of Clash of Worlds, and Lara, especially Lara, was a key unit in the last Dark Vision Worlds, or in the last Dark Visions as well. And that really speaks volume of how much these units transform the playing experience. Because if we had just the JP units, Dark Visions would be such a slog. You'd be just using these SLB units that are not worth buying into or doing. It's just, the JP meta is so stale and boring because these units, they are all bad inherently. And I feel like the global exclusive units, they are so much better and enhanced playing experience, way more than what Alum does. And I mean, and also another thing that I'd really like to point out is that Gumi is willing to try different things. Oliveira is a very good example of this. Now, granted, Oliveira isn't the best unit, but his MP scaling abilities, I mean, it's a fun concept. It's just that they missed the mark with the numbers. But I think this can be easily salvaged by an upgrade, maybe later down the line, half a year from now, when they decide to try to make Oliveira better and want to give him a few global exclusive upgrades. Why not? I mean, there are possibilities. They are doing this with Starlight Elena, Yoshi, and Behimi, for example. Why not for Oliveira as well? But all in all, he's still a nice unit. And also, let's not forget Yigni. Yigni is also an amazing unit. So yeah, and what I personally like is that Gumi still pushes the Brave Shift. I know some people dislike Brave Shift because it takes gearing units, or gearing units takes ages. But let's be honest, without a Brave Shift, units such as star player Titus, who is very popular these days because he does reach high attack numbers and deals really good damage for what he does, he can't be used in Clash. Whenever you see these units that we are using in Clash, since our Wanderer and I, how would you ever have enough space on SLB units to fit into Clash? You just can't. They can't fill 2 or 3 roles at the same time. And most of the times, Clash units, they fill 3 roles: evasion, barrage, buffers, auto buffing for morale gain, and then DPS. It's just too much to handle for SLB units. They will never be considered very deep into the meta in Clash. So yeah, it's the units. They're all amazing, and they really make a huge difference in the experience when you play global and JP. All right, next point that I'd like to talk about is the banner structure. And this might be just my personal opinion, but I feel like the banners on global are less predatory than the JP banners. Like, take for example the Yuna banner, right? I mean, this is technically Black Friday discounted, but truth be told, I don't think this is actually a Black Friday thing. It's probably something they will keep doing because the 5% NV rate on Sephiroth was a worse deal than this. And I hope they keep this deal for next week's Auron release too. But we'll see. I mean, one thing I do want to point out where the JP has a slight upside towards global is the acquisition rate of Master's Crowns. At the time of this video, we only have 2 Master's Crowns. Meanwhile, the JP, I believe you could have had 10 at the time we are at. So, but you'd have to had spent a lot more for those, right? Because on the JP server, you pull, you get an additional currency that you can use for box summons, and in these box summons, you get a Master's Crown. But these are not guaranteed. You have to pull on that banner, meaning spending lapis, and if you don't have lapis, you have to spend money to get the lapis spent for the currency to get the crown from. So essentially, you can make a monetary value out of it. On the global side of things, the crowns are entirely free. However, the acquisition rate is much slower. And Gumi, technically speaking, really hates doing global exclusive upgrades to units that are super old. I mean, we just got Gebranth upgrades, and even these upgrades to Gebranth, they don't do anything. He's just outdated when compared to Maeve, for example. So I wouldn't stress the Master's Crowns too much. I mean, yeah, rain, cool thing and all, but the fire meta is over until we get Vision World number 2, which maybe it's small, very, very brief comeback, but from there on out, it's just another meta every single Vision World / Dark Visions again. But yeah, the overall structure of banners, I like this particular. This is the third best banner style in my point of view. The premium banners are always bad, but this one is better than the last one we had with Sephiroth and Tifa. But let's take from my point of view, second best banner structure. And this is the NV quote-unquote premium summon, where you do 3 and get the 4th one for free. This is technically pretty good because you're spending 36k for a guaranteed new vision unit. In this case, this would be Maeve. Absolutely fine. 36k is a fair price for such a good unit. And the best one, from my point of view, is the banner that Tresnik and Bulwark were on, where you had a step up and you were getting, I believe, 25 shards on step 2 and 4, if I'm not totally mistaken. That is, from my point of view, the best banner structure you can have. You are getting the shards guaranteed for the unit. You have a pity at 42,000 lapis, so a little bit more costly than the usual 40k pity, but for that 2,000 more lapis that you spend, you get 50 shards guaranteed. Or if you're doing 2 full laps, was it 2? Yeah, I mean, you're getting 50 shards, that's what I remember, for 40k. And that is the huge upside of this. Compared to you spend 40,000 lapis, have the unit guaranteed, but 0 shards, apart from the login shards. So you'd have to buy the 5k shard bundle to get them, costing you 45k in the process. Meanwhile, 42k gets you 50 shards and a unit guaranteed. So if you look at it that way, it's great, and it feels vastly different from what the JP server does. Sometimes they do have a pity, sometimes they don't. Especially with premium banners, they have no pity, but you are getting 100 shards guaranteed. So one may say this is better, and I'm one of those people who says the JP premium banners are better on the JP server. But again, we're not saying what feels better or what is better or not. It's just a completely different style and a different feeling of playing. So global feels different in that regard as well. Also, another thing that I don't think the JP server has are the Fountain Pass. I mean, Adventure Pass, it's a great addition for those that spend very lightly, and I feel like 20 euros, is it 20? Yeah, it's 20 to 25 euros per month is a fair price. I mean, I'm paying 80 euros per month on Netflix, and I watch Netflix maybe 45 to an hour a day when I do my workout. So I think for the value that or for the entertainment I get out of this value, it's great. It's better than Netflix or especially Amazon Prime or Disney Plus, for example. So looking at it that way, it also feels kind of different. All right, and the last thing that I do want to talk about is how Gumi is not afraid to overbuff units. Now, what do I mean with that? Units such as, or let's take it as an example, the last Trials of Mana units. Had Gumi brought them just to the global server and did nothing to them, those would have been all dead on arrival. Especially Angela, Hawkeye, or technically all 4 of them, would they not have been touched on, all 4 would be dead on arrival. None of them would have mattered in the slightest. Neither Angela, nor Hawkeye, nor Reese, nor Duran. But Gumi wasn't afraid to technically overbuff Angela, such that she is the strongest mage we have, and probably even going to be the strongest mage until they make the same mistake again. And that is kind of ironic, isn't it? Because Dark Rain, who's supposed to be the next super strong Sephiroth-esque LB finisher for mages, if you are putting him against an equal race for Angela, Angela still comes out on top, which is kind of funny, because Angela has the higher modifier on her LB. But the downside, obviously, is that Angela needs to stack, yada, 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 yada. We know it. So what I'm getting at is, they overbuffed Angela. They also overbuffed, from my point of view, your mileage may vary, obviously, but they also overbuffed Noctis, Cobalt Blade Noctis, and Vermilion Blade Arden. Especially Arden, who is elementless on the global server compared to being element typed on the JP client. So those are 2 very good examples, Noctis and Arden, where the game on global feels already very different than JP. And it's another thing where I'm like, yeah, I enjoy global way more than I do JP. But on the flip side, global sadly is not very consistent with these things. As we've seen Yuna, they did very bad buffs to her. It was a lazy job. They had a lot of ways to fix Yuna, but they didn't, even though she's a premium unit. So if there is one thing I'd like Gumi to change, it's their consistency with buffs / overbuffing units, or underbuffing. Yuna would be a perfect case for underbuffing, and I think Auron is also going to be a good showcase for when they underbuff units. But yeah, that is it for this video. I hope I was able to kind of convey the message of why I feel like global really feels like a different game these days. And I'd like to hear your opinion. Do you guys also feel like global is a different game to JP, especially coming from those of you? I know some of you are playing the JP and global server pretty much like for like, one-to-one conversion in time spent. So I'd like to hear your opinion. If you are also feeling that global is a vastly different game now, even though the baseline game code is the same spaghetti code, so to speak. But yeah, that is it from me for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this topic. I'll be back tomorrow at the very latest with my Riku review. I'm not looking forward to that one, I can tell you that already. But anyway, see you all tomorrow. It's going to be evening, by the way. I have to work until 2 p.m. So don't expect it to be around before 8 p.m. Central European time. Anyways, have a wonderful rest of the evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you're from. See you then. Peace.